to this Assessment Reform Week subject session for maths. I am Anna Berry, so I'm the subject support lead for maths. So I do a lot of the customer facing work, and I'm joined by Nicola Woodford-Smith.
So I am the subject sector lead for maths. So my job is to work alongside Anna as part of that customer facing role, but to help steer us through this assessment and curriculum reform. So we are using webinars like this and ones that we've got coming up next week and throughout the whole process to listen to you and your voice to make sure that as we drive through the assessment process, I can take that into conversations with people like those at the DFE that are doing the work behind the scenes as well as Ofqual, and we can really make a difference as we push maths through the next phase of reform.
Absolutely. So here's a link to the Slido. So I think the link's been put in the chat as well. But this is your opportunity to ask us any questions. So later on in the presentation, there'll be the opportunity for us to answer some of the questions as best we can. We might not have all the answers, but that's your opportunity to post some of those on that Slido there. Or any comments. If you have any comments as we go through, then that's fine as well. So we're here as part of Assessment Reform Week, so it's obviously really important and really exciting here at AQA. We're trying to talk you through everything you need to know all together in one place, and across this week we're going to explore what these changes mean for learners, subjects and schools. So you will already have seen on Monday, some of you might have been in the kick-off webinar looking at reform generally and what it means for you. Yesterday, there was a video podcast looking at what reform means for your schools. So that was a conversation with school leaders on what really matters now. And then today, it's not just happening for maths, it's happening across all subjects. We have these expert-led subject-specific webinars with subject-focused updates that will help answer some of the key questions and what the assessment reform can mean for you in maths in the coming years. There's lots more to come in the rest of the week. So tomorrow it's all about how we can support you with a look at the support available, and on Friday Nick and I are both at the Festival of Education, and we're focusing on getting teachers like you involved in assessment reform with live teacher panels.
But we're also at the festival tomorrow as well. So if some of you are going tomorrow, we'll be there tomorrow and Friday. Yes. So I'm going to talk to you about some updates and what we need to think about as we head into the next phase, and also things that we don't know as yet. So what's really important on this slide coming up, we thought it was really interesting and informative just to have a picture view as to who's responsible for what as we go into the development and the assessment process. So the DFE, the Department for Education, they're responsible for setting the policy and for telling us what's going to be in the subject content. We can influence those discussions as we work through the process with them, and we're meeting with them regularly at the moment. But they ultimately will provide that subject content, the exam boards. As you can see, the arrows going into the exam boards. We're responsible for making sure we adhere to that content. The DFE will also then provide that framework to Ofqual and JCQ, and using that, they will also tell the exam boards and awarding organisations how to regulate using those assessment objectives. They'll design the assessment objectives, but they'll also tell us exactly what it is we need to do in order to regulate those qualifications. So all three arrows point to the exam boards. We're being fed all of that information, and it's for us to make sure that we deliver that coherently as the first phase, but obviously will support centres throughout the delivery and the life cycle of each of the qualifications. So what's happening at the moment? We know that that report was published, the curriculum and assessment report was published in November of 2025. And as I mentioned, the DfE are drafting that content over at the Department of Education. They're now drafting all the content across the subjects. And we are engaging. As I mentioned, we're having regular conversations both with the Department of Education and Ofqual. To make sure that they are listening to what we are feeding into them from what we're hearing from you as teachers and experts as well. What we also are waiting for now are the timings of the consultations that are due to help us line out the roadmap, if you like, of the reform. So the DfE have not yet confirmed the timing of the consultations. We're aware that we should receive final draft for the consultation in the autumn. So we will get for GCSE maths if, again, we're still waiting for the phases, but if we are as maths in phase 1, which we always have been, so we would expect to be in phase 1 again this time round. As soon as we know that is confirmed, we will update you. But all of the phases, we're waiting for those to come out, hopefully summer, if the consultations have been said to come out in autumn. Obviously, we will encourage you to feed back onto those consultations, whether that is regarding the content itself, assessment objectives, all of that stuff. The more voices, the better. So the last thing from me for the moment is just to remind you of the timeline. So as we mentioned, the consultation is expected this year towards the end of the year, with the final curriculum being published next spring, I think we heard. And then the first teach of that new curriculum will start in September 2028. Now, with regards to GCSEs, if we are in that first phase, the first teach will be in September 29, with obviously the first assessments in summer 2031. Now, you are here because you're mathematicians, and so you would have worked out already that the current year 6s coming into year 7 in the new academic year, they will be the first cohort to sit those first phase of assessments in summer 2031. And we are making sure that you are prepared as best as we can be, without any kind of concrete information coming out as yet. And we've got another webinar next week to help resource and to talk to you about how to best prepare your students for year 7. And we're going to be working alongside White Rose Maths in that webinar. We've got the links a bit later on with details on how you can join.
Thank you. Right, so as an initial sort of temperature gauge, we'd like you to take part in this quick poll. So right now, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you understand about what assessment reform could mean for you? So in the maths landscape, how much do you understand about assessment reform?
And 1 being low.
1 being low,
1 being,
low. Not very much,
Mm-hmm.
5 being absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So just give it a minute to see what happens with that. I'm not sure if we're going to see the results to it.
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
not yet.
So just give you a little bit longer just in case you still answering it. And then, so we're just having a look here at some of the key takeaways of the curriculum assessment report. And the DfE response. So if you have a look there, so we can see that we've got that early intervention at key stage 3 via those year 8 diagnostic assessments. So really key piece, and I think we have got some questions later on around that. So we've got the year 8 assessments there. We've got this post-16 level 1 qualification, which again is really quite exciting. That's something that's going to be really new. We've got an entire curriculum resequencing, so obviously that's right the way from key stage one all the way through. So don't know what that's going to look like at the moment with much of it. But really interesting that the financial literacy is not going to sit within or is not expected to sit within the GCSE maths arena. But we also have that that the amount of assessment time will be reduced. Again, that's a big thing as well. And again, we don't know how that looks yet. And those are key points that we're going to discuss further. And if you're still on that Slido, that might be somewhere where you're wanting to focus those questions around those key points.
And also, if there's any questions that you just generally want to pick up on, you can put them in the chat or in the Slido. But overall, that report said about a reduction in 10% assessment time overall. So those kind of students that are sitting 8 or 9 GCSEs, they recognise that is a huge load for students in terms of not just cognitively, but just the amount of hours that they're sitting their exams. So the report identified that they want to reduce that overall by about 10%.
So that doesn't mean that it's 10% in maths. So it might be that maths reduced by more, it might be that maths is reduced by less. But over the whole collection of GCSEs, the plan would be that the students experience 10% less in their assessment times.
But also one of the other key messages throughout the whole assessment and curriculum reform is that the DfE want to approach this is in an evolutionary way and not revolutionary. So I know if some of you were around and teaching at the last reform, that was a revolution. That was everything almost blank page, never been seen before assessments. But they don't want to do that this time. They want to just evolve in what's going well already. So there's some key exciting things to pick up on. And with that Year 8 diagnostic assessment, we'll be focusing on that in our webinar next week. So if you want to come along and hear a little bit more about that, then please join us. So we are the box there says if we're quiet, it doesn't mean we're doing nothing, and that's absolutely true. There have been many conversations between exam boards, teachers, centres, post-60, everywhere. We're talking to lots of you and lots of key stakeholders and expert panels as part of this to help influence the future of maths education. So as I mentioned, I am directly engaging with DfE and Ofqual, speaking to them regularly and sharing the sentiment of teachers. You know, I was in the classroom, as I said, I've been through reform before, have taught, 12, 13 years and have that experience to take that I think would help students and teachers moving forward to help take our maths curriculum and education into a modern Britain. But I'm also taking your voice and the students' voice, but also thinking about other things that came out in the report, like accessibility, making sure that students are best prepared for the next phase of their lives, whether that's through, training or further education, for example. And we have responded to each of the consultations that have been out already. So the post-16 consultation closed at the start of June. We've also had the SEND white paper. All of those responses can be found on the Reform Page website. But we encourage you to take part in those consultations as well. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's important that we have en masse voice, a big voice to try and steer that future. So as we mentioned, we are engaging with teachers and centres and students, and there is a QR code a little bit later where Anna and I would love to work with more of you. We launched the kind of gathering of almost extending our team to come and work with us as we move through. And we've already got people signing up and saying, yes, please, I want to be part of this discussion. And that could be, when we do receive the subject content and we start to have proof of concept or put out trials, do you want to be involved in that? Do you want to just help look at some specifications and give us your expertise and advice on how to make those right for everybody? So in any which way, please do fill out that form. It's really quick. Name, email, what you'd like to be involved in, and that's how we're continuing that high level. And things like the Festival of Education will also be at MEI tomorrow and on Friday, and we're at all of the big conferences and kind of network events across the country as well. So we're really putting ourselves out there to make ourselves as visible as possible, so you can get hold of us and speak to us.
As I'm saying, as approachable as possible, so
Exactly.
that you know where you can find us.
Yeah. So the topics I wanted to pick out were the volume of content, and actually we need to be mindful that the content that we're assessing as we go through into this new phase of reform is the right content. We want to make sure that we're not adding anything or taking anything away that is going to, it's just unnecessary. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that the skills that students are coming out with reflect modern Britain, that help them develop their mathematical skills. And as Anna mentioned, that resequencing of content over the early key stages, the policy there is that students are more of a master at those fundamentals like number, and maybe we might see things like algebra not be introduced at key stage 2. Is it appropriate for students to be exposed to algebra a little bit later on? Do we want them to be really masterful at their number skills, through the kind of infancy and primary level before they get to secondary and introduced to more complex mathematics? So the volume of content's really important. We hear from teachers all the time on the things that they want to get rid of, but we need to make sure that it's not just because we're trying to reduce the content and that it's actually serving a purpose. So all of that insight will be really important as the subject content draft comes out in the autumn. And as I mentioned as well about accessibility, that 10% overall it feels quite small when you look at it overall for 8 or 9 GCSEs, but we have to put together a case as to what that would look like for maths, because students with SEND or learners with disadvantaged backgrounds, that cognitive load for them is quite high. 3 papers for GCSE maths, 4.5 hours. Is there something we can look at in terms of concept testing or through trials where we can reduce that slightly? But also, we have to be careful in the language we use about a modern Britain or modernising the curriculum. Ultimately, what we need to think about is what the context is around the curriculum to make it modern. So we're not talking about, modern context. We're very aware, even through previous specifications, some questions have just not landed correctly because students can't identify with that content. Maybe they don't have access to smartphones or technology or streaming, etc. So we need to be mindful of not modernising the context too much that it will exclude particular learners. What we mean by modernising the curriculum is that the skills that students are being asked to learn are relevant to the real world. We're talking at GCSE maths, we're considering, constructions, bearings, that demand on students and those skills have been around for almost 100 years now. Is that still relevant? Do we need them to be analysing data a bit more and inferring from things like social media, etc.
Making sure that the curriculum is preparing them for the jobs that we're seeing coming through and the opportunities that they're going to have as they get into employment. Absolutely.
So we need to make sure that curriculum content prepares students for being young adults and, successful adults as they move through, their next stages of education and employment, rather than, we've heard it all the time as teachers, why am I learning this? What is the point in this, miss? Why are you teaching me how to use a pair of compasses? I'm never going to use them again, for example, or they don't actually bring them to school. It's one of those things that we want to investigate throughout the trials as to whether we feel that those are important skills that students need to learn, or is there something else that we should be including in our content to make it modern?
And we are all, so you and us, we're all in here for the students. We want to get this right for the students. So that's why it's really important that we're getting your voice and we're taking your voice forward. Because whilst we've both been in the classroom up until fairly recently, you're still there, and so we want to know what that picture is now.
And even the landscape's changed, with the recent announcement of social media being banned from next spring for students. We don't know what that's going to look like in the classroom. So we're going to need your input on that and how that affects students and how the education and delivery of curriculum is going to work now. We need your voices.
Talking of which, we're now
so
seamless
segue.
So we're on to the section where we're going to have a look at some of your questions that have been coming in. We have got a few that we've had previously, and then we'll be looking at some of yours as well. So that first question, so is the proposed diagnostic in year 8 planned to be standardised across the country? So I think this is going to be quite a common answer to some of your questions. The information hasn't been shared yet. So the DfE haven't finalised a lot of the information. It's confirmed its expectation that schools will assess progress in maths in year 8, as we know, and shared that they will support schools to draw on a range of high quality products to do so. But at the moment, there is no prescribed product that you're going to use. So whatever you're doing to assess your year 8s at the moment, as far as we know, is absolutely fine. You don't need to change anything right now. That might change, and there will be a plethora of companies bringing assessment products out that you are very welcome to use. You are free to use. We don't know whether it's going to be reported. The landscape isn't very clear. So our message at the moment is carry on doing what you're doing, because you are assessing year 8 at the moment. There is that importance of year 9 as we're coming through, and I think we've got another question coming up about that. But using that year 9 really carefully to address those gaps. So just make sure that your year 8 assessment is fit for purpose and allows you to make the most of year 9.
I think what they're trying to achieve through this policy is the removing that element of firefighting at year 11 that we know happens and has been happening for over a decade, well, probably longer than that, but all of the focus ends up happening at year 11, and as we mentioned, that firefighting or that whack-a-mole and the interventions that are happening at breakfast and after school and Saturdays. If this assessment at year 8, if there is something we can do at a diagnostic level at year 8 to help close the gaps, and by closing the gaps, it doesn't mean to address the misconceptions. That will come out as students are going through their GCSE learning, but we're looking at the gaps, complete gaps that students have that they should already know by the end of Key Stage 3. And so it gives, as Anna said, it gives you the opportunity in year 9 to close those gaps as part of the end of Key Stage 3 before they go into GCSE, so they are best prepared in year 10 to start that GCSE course.
And those topics that are barriers to them accessing the GCSE. So, I mean, we can all name topics that actually stop them accessing fully. So if they're not confident in their times tables, for example, that's a real blocker to a lot of the access to GCSE work. It might be that's something that becomes a real focus for year 9 because they haven't secured it. It might be that fractions haven't been secured. We don't know what the curriculum looks like, so we can't actually say what those topics will be that are gaps in Key Stage 3. But just making sure trying to remove those barriers as much as possible so that they have a good run at the GCSE.
And again, in next week's webinar, we're going to be talking about what diving into that a bit deeper, and what you've been thinking about that so far. And also, like Anna says, we haven't had it confirmed yet, but are you thinking that might be diagnostic assessments across the year, like mini ones or one big one? There are no rules at the moment. Nothing has been set out. And ultimately, I think what will be shared as well with Ofsted from this policy is that, to echo Anna's message, as long as you are assessing and that's informing your planning, then you're doing the right thing, and that's all they're looking for. I think it's that accountability, and do you know what the students need at the end of year 8, and what are you doing about that?
And that's what most schools do anyway.
Exactly.
But I think that one of the things that schools struggle with at the moment is finding that opportunity to address those gaps.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I hope that the reordering of the curriculum and maybe the reduction in content at GCSE allows that time so that you can address those, because it is quite frustrating to do that assessment, to recognise that there are gaps but have no opportunity to fill them.
I think if I was still in the classroom, I'd be looking at this as I would be approaching year 11s, you know, let's have a diagnostic, let's find out what the gaps are, let's put some interventions in across year 9. That's what I would be doing, you know, not.
But it might be that you identify a whole cohort gap.
Exactly.
and you
and
do
then that's
cohort intervention.
Perfect.
Lots of answers.
I'm sure
we'll discussion to have.
But
it leads us quite nicely onto this one.
It does. Yeah, this one's really, it comes through. It's come through today, and it's coming through quite a lot. And the question is, what about schools that already do a 3-year GCSE? This particular teacher has said we currently start our GCSE courses at the start of year 9, and that's common for most centres that we come across, where there is a 2-year, 3-year split. We do know that GCSEs are designed to be delivered across that 2-year period, and I think what we will see through this strategy or this initiative is the aim that the review is to reduce that content, as Anna just said, to help support teachers in delivering that Key Stage 3 at like a more deeper level, and not feeling the need to jump into the GCSE too early at year 9. And I think in the ultimate outcome here, or the optimum outcome, is that with the resequencing of the earlier year curriculum, earlier key stage curriculum, and allowing for that diagnostic test, will then give teachers, as Anna says, the opportunity to kind of almost pause and revisit, so then we don't feel that we need 3 years for a GCSE. So I think it's a centred decision. You know, everyone's got the autonomy in their centres as decision makers to do what's right. And whether that is called a 3-year GCSE, because it's like the university access years, isn't it? Let's do an access year to GCSE. It could be that, or preparing, being GCSE ready. It could be that, or we could kind of flip it the other way and kind of, tie off your Key Stage 3. So I don't think it's going to have a massive impact upon centres that are doing 3-year GCSE. But what I think the aim here is to focus on GCSEs lasting 2 years and taking that first year as the opportunity to really master and deepen the understanding at Key Stage 3 before they start.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this next one. So if the assessment time reduces at Key Stage 4, will the amount of content reduce as well, especially for those foundation learners? Okay, so as we've discussed several times so far, DfE has confirmed it's aiming for a reduction in examination time, that assessment time, by an average of 2.5 to 3 hours across all the subjects. Okay, not just in maths, nothing specific about maths. So we expect to see reduced assessment time, regardless of changes in content. But in addition, one of the aims of the curriculum and assessment review is to reduce content with a focus on deepening that understanding, so getting that deeper understanding rather than the broad understanding. So it hasn't, but the DfE hasn't confirmed what that will look like in practice. They will draft and publish the subject content for consultation. Autumn.
Mm-hmm.
So before it's finalised, so there will be the opportunity for consultation. So you will have your opportunity to have your say. But in the run up to that and during that consultation, we'll be getting your insight by the teacher panels that Nicola mentioned earlier. So we can continue to advocate for you, so we can be your voice with the DFE. So when the DFE publish the new subject criteria, we will then start to design our specifications. So we'll be working closely with the teacher panels, with the people that we're out and about talking to. So please take the opportunity to get involved, because this is you can make such a difference to what this is going to look like. And like I said, we want to get it right. We want to get it right for you, but we want to get it right for the students as well. And yeah, you know them, you know your students.
Yeah. And I think I was almost unaware at the last reform that I could have had a say. And you know, when it lands and you're like, oh gosh, what were they thinking? Why have they done this? But I hadn't had a voice. And I think having that voice makes you feel empowered that you're being part of the change discussion. So as Anna says, we're encouraging everyone to say as much as they can. It also helps that I can take those conversations into those meetings.
And we can't make any promises. We can't actually say that they're going to listen to you or to us, but but we can try.
Yes.
And we will. Yeah.
Influence as much as I can. So the next question we've got, the last question that's been submitted, is about the kind of almost this knock-on effect with the other supplementary and complementary qualifications, and one particularly around the new post-16 qualifications, really important. Now, as they're working through content at the moment, we're still waiting to hear more about the level 1 stepped qualifications for English and maths. But as Anna said at the beginning, it's a really exciting time to be able to offer those learners that don't secure a grade 4 at GCSE pre-16, that they're given something else that's going to prepare them again. It's a little bit like, let's diagnose them again. Let's get them ready again. Let's not just throw them back into a GCSE resit opportunity within a matter of weeks in some cases, and let's make sure that they're really prepared. What impact that's going to have on functional skills and other qualifications like FMSQs, we're not sure, because we haven't seen the content. However, those other qualifications have a purpose for particular learners. There are multiple pathways that are suitable for different learners in that sector. The range of learners and pathways is vast. So we have not heard anything. And a bit like our further maths level 2 qualifications or GCSE stats, there has been no discussions about anything changing, no qualifications going anywhere, removing, etc. What we do need to keep an eye on are the Progress 8 measures. Well, Progress 8 and Attainment 8, things are changing in that space. So we need to find out exactly what policy lands once everything's been published. But we're not expecting any of these qualifications to go. Functional skills are important for those hands-on learners that, you know, learn in a different type of way, in a practical way, and also just presented in a different way than GCSE. But as I mentioned earlier, we've submitted our consultation to the level 1 post-16, and I'm actually really excited to be able to be part of a team that's going to develop a qualification that's going to give students, those grade 1 and 2 students, the opportunity to demonstrate some success across their first year of further education. Because what we've been seeing in the past 10-15 years is that essence of repeated failure, and it really is disheartening to see. And I think the knock-on effect is we're having a decline in the maths, you know, celebration of maths in our culture, and you know, that's not what we want. We want to be able to celebrate maths and almost not beat them with the stick of resits. So we're really excited about the new level 1 step qualifications. But just to repeat, there has been no talk, there are no discussions about moves to any other qualifications. We might have to address content, because if new content is suggested for GCSE, for example, we might have to restructure some of the other content so it the sequencing and the coherence from one to the other works just as well as it does now. But we'll address that as soon as we know more.
And again, on this one, we don't know what that post-16 qualification will look like. So it could look very, very different to anything we've seen. So we don't know. It could be modular. So it could be linear. It could be very, very different. It could be a similar model to functional skills, or the entry level. It could follow those models, or it could be something completely different. Not decided. Have your say if you feel strongly about it. I feel like I'm nagging now.
No more nagging from Anna. I don't know if our colleagues behind the scenes are going to be able to share some Slido questions, if there are any questions that have come through from the chat at all. But I think whilst we're waiting for that, we can have a look at what's happening in the next steps. And what we're doing next. And as Anna says, all of this is taking place as we move from the development phase into the actual proof of concept phase. But that is the QR code that we mentioned earlier about just signing up. Let me and Anna know. That's our little form, isn't it? Mine and Anna's form. Let us know if you want to be part of those discussions. And as I said, it's a real quick one. Name, email, what are you interested in being part of? Do you want to be part of, year 8, level 1 step to post 16, GCSE maths, all of them? You can tick all of the boxes. But also, in what capacity? Do you want to, almost be proofreaders or a critical eye over documents and specifications? Or do you want your school or your college or centre to be part of a trial group? Do you want to have some students involved? Do you think you've got students that will want to talk to us? And, we could do some mock trials with papers, of course, and we could get students to test them out and share what they do and they don't like. So that QR code is there for you to get in touch and let us know what your thoughts are.
It's all right. No, there's plenty of other ways of getting in touch as well. So we are going to share with you in a minute or so how to join the teacher panels as well. But we're also so subject support. So my team, we are running little network sessions around the country where we're sharing some of the information about assessment reform, allowing you to have those face-to-face conversations with us. There will be those webinars coming through. There'll be further opportunities like this, I've no doubt at all. You can be as involved as you want to be with this. We'll make sure that you have the information, and then it's up to you how involved you want to be. But there is no reason that you can't be.
But if you're happy to just receive the information and digest, then that there are the on the assessment reform webpage, you can just sign up to receive the latest updates, which are, this is what's happened next month. These are the webinars that are coming, and you can dive in as much as you want, or just read through what's happening or any updates from Anna's team. Anna feeds into that update, so you can have that land into your inbox every term, I think it is.
Or just keep an eye out for these Curriculum Connects, these webinars, and sit and watch those with a cup of coffee. Don't have to do too much.
Another seamless link, Anna. So talking of webinars, this is the one we were talking about as we're preparing the Year 7 cohort for that next. They're going to be the first cohort in the first phase, and so Ian Davies from White Rose Maths, he's joining me. And as Anna mentioned about that Year 8 diagnostic, there are going to be companies like, and I'm sure White Rose, Sparks, Barton Math, all of that these platforms that everyone is using at the moment, they're going to be looking at what their centres that are signed up to them, what they can provide already to help with that diagnostic. So it's important that as a education provider, as an exam board, that we're working with these partners and making sure that we're keeping up to speed as to what they're doing, and Ian's going to share some of that from a White Rose perspective, and we'll dovetail in on how we can support you with additional resources to make sure that those Year 7s are as prepared as they can be, and that's free to join us next Wednesday at 4 o'clock. So I think Anna is going to finish off with some.
Yeah, so
you feel now.
I'm just going to say a little bit of a final temperature gauge. So having having had this presentation, has it made a difference? How clear are you now on what assessment reform could mean for you? Again, get in touch, probably not on that poll, but get in touch any way that you can, and I'll show you in a minute if you do have any additional questions, or if there is anything that we haven't covered that you wanted answered. I know we haven't answered everyone's questions here that were on the Slido, but we will try and follow those up if we possibly can. Okay, so this is the link to our teacher panel. So that's the AQA sort of central teacher panel. The other one's just a little form that only me and Nicola are interested in. Yeah. This is more of an AQA centric one, so you get some of the bigger information, more bigger emails. And this is at the moment, this is team maths. So there's myself and Nicola and Aisha and Colin who are my subject support managers. Our team is growing. I mean, there's more behind the scenes at the moment anyway. That's not the whole of it. This is the people that you're most likely to see at the moment. But there are more behind the scenes, and there are more front-facing people coming as well. So you can contact us through maths@aqa.org.uk. And we can give you a link if you want to have a direct talk.
Yeah. Whilst Anna's just been talking, that's interesting to see those Slido polls come through.
Yeah.
But I've also just going to take a look at some of the questions that you guys have been submitting. And one of them is, rumour has it that paper 1 non-calculator is going. Is this true?
Oh, goodness.
I love a bit of gossip. Absolutely, it's not true because there's been no content out yet, so therefore no designs have happened. But it's interesting to hear that it's paper 1 non-calculator, which makes me think, is that something that teachers want to discuss around the importance or relevance of a calculator and non-calculator paper? So that could be something we could trial as part of those focus groups around do we want papers moving forward being all calculator? A-level is.
Do you want all calculator papers?
Yeah, exactly.
What would we lose by having no non-calculator paper? I mean, they are conversations that we've had about what would that look like.
Yeah.
Is that
what teachers are wanting? Is that what they're talking about?
Absolutely.
Quite interestingly, we've answered about the effects on level 2 further maths, how will it impact ELC, etc. And as we've said, they're not going to be impacted.
We're not expecting them to be impacted, but again, as Nicola said, and I'll just highlight it, we don't know, because if something goes into GCSE that is currently in level 2 further maths, for example, then obviously the level 2 further maths specification will have to change. Or if something comes out of GCSE that level 2 further maths is reliant on, then again we will have to review that.
And it's the same for GCSE stats. Someone else has put in the chat, how will it affect GCSE stats? Yeah. But what we don't want to do is have too much overlap. So if there is more statistical content that is being directed into GCSE maths content, then we would adjust. So nothing's happening to the qualifications in terms of them going anywhere, but they might have to be updated.
They are not being reformed, but they might have to be tweaked.
Exactly. And just one last question, because I'm conscious of time, because I think we've answered pretty much everything. Someone else mentioning about the new scientific calculator doing so much more, and that is part of that calculator non-calculator piece. But one more, who will sit the level 1 step paper? And I think we've answered that. So that is being directed to students that have not yet achieved a grade 4. but that means grades at kind of U's, 1s and 2s. If a student has achieved a grade 3, they are saying that they will go into resit GCSE. They're close enough to go straight back in for a resit, but grades 1 and 2. I think that's all the big ones. Oh, a big one. Is the year 8 diagnostic the same as SATs?
No, absolutely not.
No, it will not be as accountable as that, as far as we're aware. It's not mandated.
No. And at the moment, it's not reportable either.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. Well,
right, hang on, one last slide.
One last slide, yes, a big thank you from both of us. Like, thank you so much for taking out the time. We know that there's something quite important, I think, happening at 5 o'clock if you are a football fan. So we are very appreciative of you taking the time to join us and to keep up to date. It really does say a lot about your professional development for you taking the time out to be with us. So we really do appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you again next week in next week's webinar. But do use that contact page and send us an email or follow us on LinkedIn if you've got anything else you need to say.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we are trying to be as accessible as possible. So please do, if you have any questions, find a way to contact us. That maths@aqA.org.uk is the easiest way. But yeah.
Both of us are on LinkedIn if you want to kind of reach out to us as well. Have a wonderful rest of Assessment Reform Week. We'll see you at the festival if you're there, or MEI, but if not, we'll see you next week in next week's webinar.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Everyone. Bye.